Hello everyone, this is excandersham here from Ghostlands EU, and this is another episode of World of Warcraft How to Pets. Now in this video we will be covering the Whelpling pets. The first Whelpling is probably the hardest to get, although it's on par with the Crimson Hatchling. The reason for this is that it only drops from a certain mob in Northern Ferelast, specifically the noxious Whelplings. They're found all around this lake in Northern Ferelast, of course, and they have a 1 in 1000 drop rate. Now the reason it's probably the worst pet to actually farm for is that the mobs that drop them, the noxious whelps, aren't in a very small area. They're kind of sparsely populated, and they kind of have quite a large respawn timer, so you might actually have to wait a few minutes for respawns to occur. I think it's a 1 in 1000 drop chance. It seems to be that's what people are reporting. Some people are reporting 1 in 2500, but usually Blizzard never puts something in that's that high of a drop rate, so I'm comfortable saying it's 1 in 1000. Now, so yes, if you want to farm this pet, this is where you have to go. You cannot go to the Swamp of Sorrows anymore. Those mobs no longer exist. They don't drop the pet because they don't exist. The only place to get this pet is Northern Ferelast. The second Whelpling pet is called the Azure Whelpling, and it is the Blue Dragon King version of the pet. This pet can only be found in Winter Spring, and it is a 1 in 1000 drop chance from basically anything in the zone that's between the levels of 50 and level 55. This means that the best way to actually farm this pet is to find a large cluster of mobs that are fast respawning. The problem with this is there aren't that many large clusters of mobs inside Winter Spring, and so it's very difficult to farm this pet unless you're farming Timbermaw rep and you get it accidentally, or you're farming Winter Spring Frostsaber rep and you get it accidentally. So maybe it's a good way to actually farm 2 pets at once, or 2 reputations at once, by farming Winter Spring Frostsaber rep and getting the pet in the process. Now if you just want the pet and you don't give a shit about the Timbermaw and you don't care about the Winter Spring Frostsaber, I don't know why you wouldn't. Well, if you're Horde, of course you don't care because you can't get it. What you need to do probably is you need to start in the Frostwhisper Gorge. There are a lot of mobs in that gorge there. Clear out the gorge, then fly up just on the right side of the map. Keep flying up towards the Winterfall village and kill the Yeti base and the Moonkin base on your way to the Timbermaw village. And if the Timbermaw village isn't wiped out by people farming Timbermaw rep, you can farm there and hopefully get the pet. Once all the mobs are done, just repeat the cycle and go on and on. You probably will be spending quite a lot of time actually farming this pet, which does reflect why the price on the auction house has actually increased after Cataclysm and hasn't actually gone down. Usually you'd see after expansion pets prices will go down. This one has increased because it's a very difficult pet to get. The third Whelpling pet is called the Dark Whelpling, and in my opinion, it's the easiest Whelpling to actually farm, and that is actually reflected in the fact that it typically sells less on the auction house than the other pets. The reason for this is this pet drops from a ton of mobs. It's basically been added to the loot table of any dark Whelpling mob in the entire game, basically. You can farm it in wetlands, you can farm it in badlands, you can farm it in the Dustwallow Marsh. You can basically farm it anywhere you can find dark Whelpling mobs. My opinion though, the best place to farm this is in the Badlands, and specifically the Nyxondria's Whelps. Now, it's really difficult to pronounce the name, but you don't actually know what the pronunciation is. Nyxondra's Whelps, which are found to the left of New Kagath in Badlands. Now the reason these are probably the easiest pets to farm, the easiest mobs to farm the pet from, is that there are a ton of them in a very small area, and they actually have quite a fast respawn timer. But if you are a very high level and you're like a mage, you can just basically kill them all in one fell swoop. There's also another area in Badlands to the far right of the map, in the Leflore Ravine. You will find other Whelpling mobs there that you can farm until the Nyxondra's Whelps have basically come off cooldown and basically respawned again. Now, the Leflore Ravine doesn't have as many as many mobs in a very small area. They're kind of sparsely spread about, but there are, I think, around 20 mobs that you can farm the pet from. What I can find is that the drop chance is still 1 in 1,000, but because there are a lot more mobs in a small area, you basically know which mobs drop the pet. It's the easiest one to farm. So statistically speaking, you should get this pet before any other if you're farming the mob. But usually statistics don't actually reflect reality, so you might be spending quite a long time farming this mob anyway. Now, the final Whelpling pet is called the Crimsonwell, and you can farm this pet anywhere in the wetlands. It's a 1 in 1,000 drop chance anywhere in the zone. It's a zone drop. Big problem though, there aren't many places in the wetlands that have a large contingent of mobs that have a fast respawn timer. So basically my advice would be to farm to the right of the Green Warden's Cove, where all the orcs are fighting, like the Dragonkin, and where the Ebon Whelps are. The reason for this is that the Ebon Whelps drop the Dark Whelpling pet. So basically you can farm the Dark Whelpling while trying to farm for the Crimson Whelpling, and the orcs in the area also drop the pet. Now, there are a lot of orcs in the area. Be sure not to kill the orcs that are actually fighting the Dragonkin, because most of the time they will not actually give loot. But if you're actually farming the mobs and actually fighting the Dragonkin, they will drop loot, and also the Ebon Whelps will drop loot as well. To be honest, this is probably the second worst thing to farm, because there aren't that many places in the wetlands where you can actually have a large contingent of the mobs. The Azure Whelpling is slightly easier because barely anyone goes to Winterspring anyway, unless they're actually farming Timbermoor reps, so you can basically just nuke everything down in an area, just AoE everything down, and then you can just fly around. Wetlands is a little bit more difficult than that, because usually the mobs are more sparsely populated. Of course there are knoll camps that you can basically AoE down, and maybe that's a better way to do it, but basically if you can find a place in the wetlands that have a large contingent of mobs and a fast respawn timer, I couldn't find it, but maybe you can find it, and basically just farm those until you get the tiny Crimson Whelpling. This usually does sell for quite a lot on the auction house. It usually sells for around the same amount as the Azure Whelpling, which does basically factor in that it's a zone drop. So that's about it, guys. Thank you for watching this video guide. I hope you liked this help on trying to farm the Whelpling pets. If you want to like the video, please like, because it does really help me out. If you want to subscribe, please subscribe for more Whelpling pet well, I'm not going to make another Whelpling pet video because that would be really stupid. More pet videos, and if you want to comment, please comment. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, there's a link in the description below. So thank you for watching, guys. Peace out.